Most people think the first $100,000 is a money problem. It isn't. And that misunderstanding quietly costs people years, sometimes decades, because while they keep asking how to make more, they never stop to ask why money keeps slipping through their hands in the exact same invisible ways. That is where the damage begins. Not in the bank account, not in the paycheck, not in the economy, in the pattern nobody notices because it doesn't look dramatic enough to feel dangerous. It looks normal. It looks responsible. It looks like life. And that is exactly why it survives. You tell yourself you just need a better month, a better opportunity, a better salary, a better break. But if the internal machinery is still the same, every external improvement gets swallowed by the same mental habits that built your current reality. Read that again, because this is where most people lose years without realizing they are repeating the same financial season in different clothing, different jobs, same impulses, different incomes, same emotional decisions, different plans, same hidden ceiling. That first 100,000 is not blocked by a lack of effort. It is blocked by an invisible architecture of behavior, an architecture so familiar, you defend it, you protect it, you call it practicality. Meanwhile, it keeps you exactly where you are. And the worst part? You can be intelligent enough to understand this intellectually and still live against it every single day. Because knowledge has almost nothing to do with threshold wealth. People hate hearing that. But it is true. There are people who know every productivity trick, every side hustle, every investing cliche, every motivational quote, and they are still financially circling the same drain. Not because they are lazy, because they are unconsciously loyal to a version of life that never learned how to hold expansion. That sounds abstract now. Stay with me. Because once you see this pattern clearly, you will start noticing why some people spend 10 years working and remain fragile, while others, without appearing dramatically smarter, begin stacking irreversible financial momentum. The difference is not where most people look. It starts much earlier, much quieter, long before the first big deposit, long before the first investment account, long before the visible signs of progress. It starts in private decisions nobody claps for, and in private reactions nobody admits. You do not build the first 100,000 when the money arrives. You build it in the nervous system before the money ever shows up. That sentence makes almost no sense to the average person, which is why the average person keeps restarting financially from zero in new forms, over and over again. A tax refund disappears, a bonus disappears, an extra freelance check disappears, a small raise disappears. Unexpected money enters a life built on unconscious leakage and vanishes into the emotional gravity of that life. Then people say something that sounds harmless. I just need to earn more. No. That is usually not the first problem. Because if more money enters an unchanged identity, it often finances larger versions of the same confusion. Larger subscriptions, larger emotional purchases, larger postponements, larger rationalizations, larger self-soothing. Money does not automatically create structure. Sometimes it simply exposes the absence of it. Stop. This is not about blaming poor people. This is about exposing a truth that almost nobody says clearly enough. The first 100,000 is usually lost many times mentally before it is ever built physically. Daniel was not irresponsible. That is what made his situation harder to detect. He paid his bills. He worked consistently. He avoided obvious financial disasters. He was not reckless. He was what most people would call stable. And yet every 12 months, his life looked strangely the same. Not identical on the surface, but identical in financial weight. A little more income, a little more fatigue, a little more hope, a little more frustration, and no real separation from fragility. He kept believing the next improvement would finally create breathing room, a promotion, a side project, a bonus, a smarter app, a new budgeting method. But every new system entered the same invisible ecosystem inside him. And that ecosystem had rules Daniel never examined. He needed to feel productive constantly. He needed to feel rewarded quickly. He needed to feel that sacrifice was visibly paying off. And when reality moved slower than his emotional tolerance, his decisions started leaking. Not dramatically, quietly. That matters. Because people imagine financial self-sabotage as some huge irresponsible act. It usually is not. It is micro-relief repeated with surgical consistency. Ordering convenience because the day felt exhausting. Buying stimulation because the week felt empty. Upgrading things to feel movement. Starting plans and abandoning them when they stop feeling exciting. Touching long-term money because short-term discomfort feels louder. None of these decisions feel catastrophic in isolation. That is why they survive interrogation. Each one can be justified. Each one can be explained. Each one sounds reasonable enough. But together, they create a life where accumulation never gains uninterrupted oxygen, and wealth thresholds need uninterrupted oxygen. That is what almost nobody teaches. People talk about making money. People talk about investing money. Very few people talk about preserving psychological continuity long enough for money to stack. That continuity is rare. Because emotionally, most people cannot tolerate invisible progress. They need visible reassurance. They need to feel something is happening. And when wealth is still in the boring construction phase, they panic internally. Not always consciously, but behaviorally. They start shifting strategies. They start second-guessing. They start rewarding themselves early. They start looking sideways. They start thinking maybe this is not working. Wait, this next part matters more than it sounds. The first 100,000 is often built during a period where externally almost nothing feels impressive. Your life does not look rich. Your bank account does not look magical. Your social proof does not look transformed. Your effort does not look cinematic. And because modern life has trained people to associate progress with visible stimulation, they misread slow accumulation as failure. So they interrupt it, again and again, and every interruption restarts the compounding clock. That sentence should bother you. Because many people are not financially behind because they never started. They are behind because they keep emotionally interrupting what needed uninterrupted years. Daniel did this for almost 9 years. 9 years of motion, 9 years of effort, 9 years of intelligent intentions. And still, he felt like he was carrying water in his hands. Because he was trying to build wealth with a nervous system addicted to signs of immediate payoff. That combination is deadly. Not dramatically deadly, quietly deadly. The kind that looks like an ordinary life from the outside, but internally feels like running and never arriving. If any part of this sounds like your life, you already know this conversation matters. Because Daniel's real problem was not low income. And it was not lack of discipline in the traditional sense. It was something far more invisible. He did not know how to remain loyal to outcomes that had not become emotionally satisfying yet. Read that again. He did not know how to remain loyal to outcomes that had not become emotionally satisfying yet. And most people do not know that either, which means the money issue is still only the surface. The deeper fracture has not even appeared yet. The strange thing about delayed financial awareness is that it rarely arrives as one dramatic realization. It arrives in fragments. A sentence that bothers you more than it should. A number that suddenly feels embarrassing. A bank notification that creates disproportionate anxiety. A conversation with someone your age that leaves a quiet sting. You do not wake up one morning and say, "I understand my financial patterns now." No. You start feeling friction in places that used to feel normal. Daniel noticed it in the smallest moments. He would receive extra money, and instead of feeling strategic, he felt temporary relief. That should have sounded an alarm, but it did not. Because relief feels positive enough to disguise itself as progress. That distinction is dangerous. Progress builds. Relief releases pressure. Those are not the same emotional event, but most people treat them as if they are. They think feeling less stressed means moving forward. Sometimes it only means sedating the current discomfort. And sedated discomfort has a short half-life. It comes back, which creates the need for more relief, which creates more leakage, which creates more stagnation. And then something deeply frustrating happens. You begin working not for wealth, but for recurring emotional stabilization. That sentence explains more middle-class exhaustion than most financial books ever will. People are not only earning to survive, they are earning to repeatedly calm the consequences of prior unstructured decisions. That cycle feels like adulthood, so nobody questions it enough. Bills, tiny emergencies, impulse repairs, emotional purchases, convenience spending, reward spending, stress spending, low energy spending. None of it individually feels like the reason wealth is absent. Together, it creates a treadmill disguised as normal life. And treadmills are psychologically cruel because they create movement without relocation. You feel active, you feel occupied, you feel burdened, you feel responsible. But distance is not being created. That is where Daniel started becoming quietly afraid, not because he was broke, because he was functioning, and functioning can hide decline for a very long time. He looked normal enough. His calendar was full enough. His effort was visible enough. His intentions were good enough. But under all of it was one haunting question he kept suppressing. Why does progress always feel temporary? Why does every improvement dissolve so fast? Why do I keep feeling almost there? That almost is psychologically exhausting. Because almost creates hope. And repeated hope followed by repeated reset creates internal distrust. Eventually, you stop believing your own plans. Not verbally, behaviorally, you still make plans. But a part of you no longer expects them to hold. That is a devastating place to live. Because now discipline becomes harder. Consistency becomes harder. Patience becomes harder. Not because you lack ambition. Because repeated self-interruption has trained you not to trust duration. Read that again. Repeated self-interruption trains you not to trust duration. This is where many people unknowingly become addicted to restarting. New month, new budget, new mindset, new app, new promise, new attempt. Because restarting gives an instant hit of control. But continuation is emotionally harder. Continuation asks for invisible loyalty. Continuation asks you to do boring things without applause. Continuation asks you to remain unchanged long enough for the result to change. That is where most people detach. Daniel detached there too, again and again. He did not fail in giant moments. He failed in the quiet moments when nothing exciting was happening and consistency was the only available move. That is where the first 100,000 is secretly decided. Not in motivational bursts, not in one lucky investment, not in one viral business move. In uneventful repetition. And uneventful repetition is where impatient identities suffer. Stop. This might be the most uncomfortable truth in the entire conversation. Many people do not have a money problem. They have an inability to emotionally survive non-dramatic accumulation. That sounds small. It is not. Because wealth compounds in silence long before it compounds in visible numbers. And silence makes insecure minds assume nothing meaningful is happening. So they interfere. They touch the process. They optimize too soon. They consume too soon. They switch too soon. They celebrate too soon. They doubt too soon. Daniel kept doing that until one afternoon something embarrassingly simple happened. He opened his banking app, looked at the number, and realized he had been financially busy for years without ever being financially cumulative. That difference hit him harder than any unpaid bill ever had. Because busy feels honorable, cumulative changes lives, and Daniel had confused the two for nearly a decade. That was the afternoon Daniel stopped asking a common question: how do I make more money? And started asking a much more dangerous one: what keeps happening to me after money arrives? That question changes everything, because the first question keeps your attention outside. The second one forces it inward. And inward is where most people do not want to look. Not because there is no answer there, because there is too much answer there. Patterns you justified, reactions you normalized, financial leaks you disguised as harmless, tiny emotional dependencies that looked too ordinary to feel expensive. But they were expensive, not only in dollars, in momentum, in continuity, in trust, in personal credibility. Because every time you make a plan and emotionally interrupt it, you teach yourself a silent lesson. My long-term decisions do not survive my short-term feelings. That lesson sinks deeper than people realize. After enough repetitions, you begin negotiating against your own future automatically. You save, but with hesitation. You commit, but with escape routes. You delay spending, but only until discomfort becomes louder. This creates a fractured financial identity. One part of you wants accumulation. Another part of you wants immediate emotional anesthesia. And anesthesia often wins. Not because it is smarter, because it is louder in the moment. This is where people become victims of what looks like randomness, unexpected expenses, broken plans, vanished savings, repeated resets. But if you zoom out far enough, it stops looking random. It starts looking rhythmic. The same month, the same excuse, the same reward pattern, the same emotional surrender, different forms, same choreography. Daniel saw that and felt embarrassed, not because he was ignorant, because he was predictable. That is harder to admit. Ignorance feels solvable. Predictability feels personal. He realized he had been waiting for an external breakthrough while internally repeating the same wealth-repelling rhythm. Read that again. He was waiting for external progress while protecting internal repetition. That contradiction destroys years. People say they want financial freedom. But watch what happens when life asks them for delayed gratification, invisible discipline, repetitive restraint, and emotionally unrewarded patience. Suddenly, freedom sounds less attractive than relief. And relief is always available. A purchase, a convenience, a small indulgence, a pause in discipline, a harmless exception, a reward because I deserve it. That phrase has bankrupted more futures than people understand. Not because rewarding yourself is evil, because undirected self-reward becomes a leak in every long game. The first 100,000 requires something emotionally unnatural. You must let boring decisions matter. You must let invisible months count. You must let uneventful discipline stack without touching it every time you feel uncertain. That sounds simple, it is not. Because modern attention is trained for stimulation, not quiet continuity. People can binge 10 hours of content, refresh social media every 6 minutes, and switch between ambitions every 2 weeks. But ask them to repeat one financially intelligent pattern for 3 invisible years, and their nervous system starts searching for exits. This is not a budgeting issue. This is not an app issue. This is not a spreadsheet issue. This is an identity endurance issue. And identity endurance is the invisible bridge between income and wealth. Without it, income visits. With it, income stays. Daniel finally understood why he kept feeling like he was rebuilding from scratch. Because in many ways he was. Every emotional interruption was a hidden demolition. Every premature reward was a quiet withdrawal from the future. Every inconsistency was not just lost money. It was lost compounding time, and time is where the first 100,000 is actually born. Daniel used to think he needed a bigger opportunity, a smarter investment, a stronger side income, a lucky acceleration. Something external dramatic enough to finally change the graph. But that belief was comforting for one reason. It allowed him to stay innocent. Because as long as the missing piece was out there, he did not have to confront the possibility that his own internal rhythm was the bottleneck. That is the painful shift almost nobody wants. The realization that you may not be waiting for the right chance. You may be repeatedly dissolving the effect of every chance you get. That is a much less comfortable story, because it removes luck as the primary villain and places repetition under the spotlight. Think about this. How many times has money entered your life with promise, only to leave without changing your trajectory? How many times did you tell yourself this month would be different? How many times did progress briefly appear and then dissolve into ordinary survival again? That pattern is not bad luck. It is unexamined choreography, and choreographies repeat until interrupted consciously. This is the part where some people get defensive, because hearing this feels accusatory. But accusation is useless. Recognition is everything. You cannot build irreversible money with reversible behavior. Read that again. You cannot build irreversible money with reversible behavior. If every disciplined month can be emotionally undone by one impulsive weekend, you are not building, you are rehearsing. If every long-term intention collapses when life becomes boring, you are not delayed. You are unstable. If every financial system requires constant emotional excitement to continue, it will not survive real life. Because real life is repetitive. Real life is slow, real life is visually unimpressive, and the first 100,000 is hidden inside that unimpressive stretch. People imagine wealth as a result of intensity. Often it is a result of tolerated monotony. That is not inspiring, it is true. The people who eventually create meaningful financial separation are not always the most brilliant. They are often the ones who stopped needing every month to feel emotionally significant. They let months stag. They let decisions repeat. They let silence do its work. They stop digging up the seed to check if it is growing. That image matters, because many people destroy progress through constant inspection, checking, adjusting, touching, rewarding, restarting, questioning. They do not let disciplined time become dense enough to transform anything. Daniel finally saw his mistake. He had spent years trying to feel like a financially improving person instead of becoming one quietly. That distinction changed him. Because feelings are immediate, construction is cumulative, and immediate feelings are unreliable architects. Stop! Here's the sentence Daniel wrote down that day. My future was not being stolen by one big failure. It was being negotiated away in ordinary moments I kept calling harmless. That sentence should sit with you, because most financial collapse is not cinematic, it is administrative, it is emotional, it is repetitive. It is made of tiny permissions, tiny softness, tiny inconsistencies, tiny surrenders. And tiny surrenders, repeated long enough, become permanent ceilings. This is why the first 100,000 is built differently than people think, not by one brilliant move, but by surviving your own patterns long enough to stop feeding them. That is the real formula nobody explained, and it has almost nothing to do with math. Most people will hear everything we just said, nod in agreement, feel temporarily aware, and then go back to the same unconscious choreography by next week. That is what makes this conversation uncomfortable. Awareness is not rare. Sustained interruption is rare. Seeing the pattern is one thing. Refusing to keep participating in it when life feels ordinary, that is something else entirely. Because there will be no dramatic soundtrack, no cinematic montage, no visible applause. No one will call you disciplined for not touching what you promised not to touch. No one will celebrate the month you quietly repeated the same intelligent behavior again. No one will notice the purchase you did not make, the convenience you did not buy, the emotional shortcut you did not take, or the plan you did not interrupt. And that is precisely why so many people fail there. They want external confirmation during an internal construction season. But the first 100,000 is usually built in seasons that feel invisible, repetitive, and deeply unglamorous. Which means by the time the money becomes visible, the person has already changed long before the number did. That is the part nobody explains clearly enough. The first 100,000 is not proof that you learned how to make money. It is proof that you learned how to stop emotionally undoing yourself. Read that again. It is proof that you learned how to stop emotionally undoing yourself. Because if self-interruption remains stronger than self-trust, every financial strategy becomes temporary. Every good month becomes fragile. Every opportunity becomes diluted, and every plan quietly expires. Daniel understood something else too. He was never as far from progress as he thought. He was far from continuity, and continuity was the missing multiplier the entire time. Not genius, not luck, not one perfect decision. Continuity under emotional boredom, continuity under uncertainty. Continuity when nothing feels impressive yet. That is where silent fortunes begin. So maybe the uncomfortable question is not, how can I make my first 100,000? Maybe the more honest question is, how many times have I delayed it by choosing relief over repetition? Sit with that. Because the answer is usually not in one big mistake. It is in ordinary moments you still call harmless. And those moments are either building your future quietly or negotiating it away. There is rarely a middle. If this felt uncomfortably familiar, then this channel is for people who are done mistaking movement for progress. Because some financial truths do not look like money lessons. They look like personal confrontations. And the next one might be even harder. Why some people work harder every year and still become financially easier to break.